Relax, Miss Smith. If you handle interviews the way you handle unexpected situations.
Amber had the perfect plan for the interview. Professional blue dress, printed resume, and her confidence, fake but present. Now, what was not in the plan? A violent gust of wind lifting her dress all the way to her waist, showing her pink panties, her thighs, her entire body, in front of a crowded street, and the hottest man she'd ever seen, who, by a twist of fate, was the company's CEO. Definitely the worst day of her life. Now she has to do the interview with him, and it's going to be the funniest and most embarrassing thing you'll ever see. Hello, my name is Kay, and I'm the mind behind this channel. And today, I want to thank the comments from Julie and Grace. Thank you so much for commenting. Your support changes everything. And if you want your comment to appear in the next video, answer me real quick. Can a love story born from embarrassment work out? Tell me here in the comments. Chapter 1. Wind, Shame, and CEO.
And a lot about my organization skills, apparently.
Thank you.
I'm way too nervous, and I think I'm gonna throw up before I get there, I said on speakerphone while adjusting my blue dress for the third time in the mirror of my tiny apartment. My best friend's voice echoed through the room with that enthusiasm only she could manage at 8 in the morning on a Monday. Relax, girl. You're perfect for this position, and Victor Novak is gonna love you. I'm absolutely sure. Ren responded from the other end of the line, and I could perfectly imagine the excited expression on her face. Seriously, your portfolio is amazing and you're killer at marketing. I grabbed the leather folder holding my printed resume and examples of my best campaigns, checking for the 5th time if everything was organized. Victor Novak is the company's CEO, Ren, a badass billionaire who appears in magazines and intimidates people just by looking at them. And I'm gonna interview with him after going through HR. Technically with HR first. So you have time to breathe before facing the big boss, she said, with that annoying optimism that at the same time calmed me down. But yeah, eventually you'll have to talk to him in person, and you'll kill it too because you're incredible. I took a deep breath and grabbed my purse, throwing it over my shoulder with a movement that tried to seem confident, but probably just looked anxious. I hope you're right, because I really need this job, like desperately need it. You're gonna get it, trust me, Ren insisted with total conviction. And now get out of there and go show them the talent you have, and call me later to tell me everything in the smallest details. I hung up with a small smile and left the apartment 15 minutes earlier than necessary, because arriving early had always been my way of controlling the anxiety bubbling in my stomach. The day was surprisingly beautiful for New York, with a rare blue sky and a pleasant breeze that made the walk to Novak Media perfectly bearable. I walked down the sidewalk mentally rehearsing answers to the most common interview questions, trying to convince myself that I was competent and capable. I was only 2 blocks from Novak Media's imposing building when I checked my watch and smiled. Satisfied. Perfect. 15 minutes early. Enough time to breathe. Check my resume one last time and compose myself before going in. But it was exactly in this moment of false security that the universe decided to remind me that nothing in my life ever went according to plan. The gust of wind came out of nowhere, violent and completely unexpected, and before my brain could process what was happening, my professional blue dress lifted all the way to my waist, as if it had a mind of its own. I screamed instinctively and brought both hands to the fabric in a desperate attempt to pull it down, but the movement made my folder fall to the ground with a dull thud, and my purse slip off my shoulder. Papers flew in all directions, carried by the same damn wind that had exposed my pink panties to the entire street. And my favorite lipstick rolled across the dirty sidewalk while I held the dress with both hands, trying to preserve what was left of my dignity. People passed by and some looked with poorly disguised curiosity. Others quickly looked away with that awkward politeness of those who don't want to seem nosy. And some even laughed quietly in that way that makes you want to bury yourself alive. No, 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 I muttered to myself while trying to bend down to pick up the papers without letting go of the dress. But the task was physically impossible, and I was on the verge of a complete nervous breakdown. My face burned with shame, and I was absolutely certain I was red from my hairline to my neck. And the only thing I could think was that this was definitely the worst day of my entire life. Need help? The voice came from somewhere nearby, and was masculine, deep and smooth, with a tone that suggested contained amusement but not cruelty. I didn't even look up because I was too busy trying to gather my scattered belongings with one hand, while holding the rebellious dress with the other. I'm fine. It's just the wind that threw everything on the ground and I need to pick it up. But thanks anyway. I responded in a rush, the words coming out too fast and without much coherence, while humiliation consumed me completely. He crouched down beside me and started picking up the papers that had flown farther away, and it was only when I saw his hands collecting my resume that I finally looked up. The man was absurdly handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair, with a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, impeccably styled dark hair and eyes that had a disturbing intensity even while performing the simple act of helping me. He picked up my lipstick from the gutter and handed it to me along with the organized papers, and his gaze briefly dropped to the resume that was on top of the pile. "Job interview?" he asked with genuine curiosity while checking his watch in a casual movement that revealed an expensive watch on his wrist. "Yes, and now I'm late because of this whole disaster," I replied, finally managing to look at him properly. And a new wave of mortification hit me as I remembered that this gorgeous man had just seen me in my panties. "Which company?" he asked, while helping me put everything back in the folder and holding my purse so I could organize better. "Novak Media. It's 2 blocks from here, and I should be walking in right now, but instead, I'm here on the sidewalk floor gathering my dignity along with my documents." The answer came out more bitter than I intended, but he just gave a low laugh that somehow didn't seem mean. He checked his watch again, and his smile widened slightly, as if he knew something I didn't know. "You still have 12 minutes, so you have time to get there calmly if you leave now. Novak Media is a good company. You'll like working there if you get the position." I finally managed to stand up with all my belongings in my arms, and my posture was probably the least elegant possible, but at least the dress was back in the right place, and I was no longer exposed to the world. "You know the company?" I asked, trying to seem minimally composed despite the chaos that had been the last 5 minutes. "Vaguely," he replied with that small smile that revealed absolutely nothing, and then handed me the purse he'd been holding. "Oh, and just so you know, pink panties. Good taste, by the way. If I thought I was red before, now I was absolutely certain my face was the color of a ripe bell pepper and about to catch fire. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have seen that. It was the wind and it wasn't intentional at all. I swear I don't normally go around showing my underwear to random strangers on the street." He laughed again, and the sound was genuinely amused without being cruel, which somehow made everything even more embarrassing. "I know it wasn't on purpose. You can relax because the world won't end because of it. Good luck on your interview. You're gonna need it, because Victor Novak is pretty demanding with the people he hires." The way he mentioned the CEO's name made my forehead furrow slightly, and even knowing that time was passing, I couldn't help but ask, "You know him personally, Victor Novak?" "Vaguely," he repeated with the same enigmatic tone as before, and then took a step back as if releasing me to continue on my way. "Now go before you're actually late, and try to avoid any other treacherous winds on the way." I mumbled a hasty and somewhat incoherent thank you before walking as fast as I could in my medium-heeled shoes, and I could feel the weight of his gaze on my back as I walked away down the sidewalk. My heart was still racing from the shame and adrenaline, and all I could think was that I had just shown my panties to the most handsome man I'd ever seen in my life. I arrived at Novak Media's elegant reception with exactly 5 minutes to spare, breathless and probably looking much less professional than I'd like, but at least I'd managed to arrive on time. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile and checked my name on the list before giving me instructions. "Amber Smith, for the marketing analyst interview?" she asked with cordial efficiency, and I just nodded while trying to catch my breath. "HR is waiting for you on the 3rd floor, room 302. The elevators are on the right." I thanked her and followed the instructions, using the minutes in the elevator to compose myself and check if I looked presentable. The dress was in place. My hair was still in the low bun. There were no visible dirt stains from the sidewalk. I took several deep breaths and tried to push the memory of the pink panties and the handsome man to the back of my mind because I needed to focus on what really mattered. The interview with the human resources manager went surprisingly well, considering the absolute disaster my morning had been up to that point. She reviewed my portfolio with genuine attention and asked intelligent questions about my previous campaigns, especially about the one I'd developed for Brand X that had impressive conversion numbers. I managed to answer everything with a confidence I definitely wasn't feeling inside, but my work had always been my greatest strength, and that gave me security. "Your portfolio is really impressive, Amber. Very creative and organized. Exactly the profile we're looking for to join our digital marketing team," she said, after reviewing each project thoroughly, and her smile seemed genuine and not just protocol. "The last stage of our selection process is a quick interview with the CEO, Victor Novak. He likes to personally meet all the professionals who are going to work on the creative team, and he's available right now. Can you wait about 10 minutes? My stomach tied in a tight knot, but I kept my professional smile and nodded with all the confidence I could fake. "Of course, no problem at all. I can wait as long as necessary." The waiting room was elegant and comfortable, but the 10 minutes I spent there were the longest and most agonizing of my entire life. I checked my reflection on my phone approximately 15 times to make sure I looked presentable, adjusted my dress, touched my hair, took deep breaths repeatedly while trying to calm the nerves jumping in my stomach. Victor Novak was a billionaire CEO, and I was about to have an interview with him, and this was probably my only chance to make a good impression. Lorraine, his secretary, appeared at the door with a friendly and professional smile. "Amber Smith, Victor is waiting for you. It's the last door down the hall, on the right." I stood up with slightly shaky legs and followed down the polished floor hallway to the imposing door at the end, and my hands were damp when I knocked 3 times with my knuckles, in a rhythm I hoped sounded confident. "Come in," a voice answered from the other side, and there was something in that deep tone that sounded strangely familiar, but I couldn't identify exactly why. I opened the door and entered the office that was exactly the kind of environment I'd expect from a billionaire CEO, with huge windows offering a spectacular view of New York, elegant and minimalist furniture, and an atmosphere of contained power. But none of that mattered, because my eyes went straight to the man sitting behind the executive desk, in an impeccable suit and relaxed but confident posture, and my brain simply completely froze. It was him. The man from the street, the man who had helped me gather my papers, the man who had seen my pink panties and made a comment about my good taste. My mouth opened in a silent O of absolute shock and growing horror, and all coherent thoughts simply evaporated from my head as I processed the impossibility of the situation. Victor Novak looked at me with that same small and enigmatic smile he'd used on the street, but now there was something even more amused in his expression, as if he'd been waiting exactly for this reaction and was enjoying every second. "Hi again," he said with a voice dripping with smooth and completely controlled sarcasm. "A pink panties. If the floor could open up and swallow me alive at that exact moment, I would have thanked the universe on my knees, but instead I remained frozen at the office entrance with my dignity completely shattered at my feet. You're Victor Novak," I finally managed to stammer, and my voice came out about 3 tones higher than normal and somewhat hysterical. "Guilty," he confirmed, while casually gesturing to the chair in front of his desk, as if this were just another normal interview, and not the most mortifying situation of my entire existence. "Sit, let's talk about your professional qualifications, and also about treacherous winds that reveal pink lingerie." I wanted to die, disappear, cease to exist completely, but instead my shaky legs took me to the chair, and I sat with all the composure I could muster, which definitely wasn't much considering the absolutely insane circumstances. "I can explain what happened out there on the street," I started to say with a desperate voice, but he raised a hand in a gesture that immediately silenced me. "You don't need to explain anything at all because wind happens to everyone, and I perfectly understand the physics involved," he said, while picking up my resume that apparently was already waiting on his desk. "But what I really want to discuss now is your work, which, by the way, is excellent. The campaign you developed for Brand X was extremely creative and efficient, and your conversion numbers were genuinely impressive." The sudden change to the professional topic caught me completely off guard, and for a moment, I could only sit there looking at him without knowing how to react appropriately. Victor Novak was being completely serious now, reviewing my portfolio with genuine attention and making specific and detailed comments about projects I'd developed. And gradually, I managed to focus enough to respond in a minimally coherent way. "Thank you," I murmured, still somewhat dazed, but trying to sound professional and composed. "I put a lot of work and research into those campaigns, so I'm really happy they caught your attention positively." Victor studied me for a moment that seemed to last much longer than it probably did, with those dark and intense eyes that seemed to see much more than I'd like to reveal about myself. Then he leaned slightly back in the executive chair and crossed his fingers on the desk. "But before making any decision, I need to know something important. Can you work here, with me, every day, knowing that I saw everything? Because this absolutely cannot affect your professional performance or create an uncomfortable work environment." The heat returned to my face with full and renewed force, and I wanted to stick my head inside my purse and never come out. Can I try very hard to forget that happened if you can also do the same?" He laughed quietly, and the sound did something completely strange running down my entire spine. "Good luck with that attempt because I'm definitely not going to be able to forget, but I promise to be professional and appropriate. Most of the time, at least." I frowned slightly, genuinely unsure if he was being serious or just continuing to tease me mercilessly. "This is starting to sound suspiciously like harassment, Mr. Novak." "Victor, you can just call me Victor," he corrected, with that smile I was quickly learning to recognize as his trademark. "And it's definitely not harassment. It's just brutal honesty about an unusual situation." But speaking completely seriously now, The position is yours if you want to accept it. You start Monday, and you'll work directly with our digital marketing team led by Sarah. My brain needed a few precious seconds to fully process what he'd just said, and when the words finally made sense, a contradictory mix of shock and euphoria hit me simultaneously. Seriously? I actually got the job. Even after you saw me practically naked in pink panties on the street less than 2 hours ago. Exactly because of that, he replied, while closing my portfolio with a definitive and final movement. You're too good at what you do for me to lose a talented professional because of pink panties, however memorable and well-chosen they were. So, do you accept the position or not? Wounded pride and desperate financial need fought inside me for approximately 3 seconds, but in the end, need won overwhelmingly, because I really needed this job, and I wasn't going to let shame stop me from accepting a professional opportunity like this. I definitely accept the position. Great. Excellent decision. Lorraine will give you all the details about contract, benefits, and the onboarding process. He stood up from the executive chair, and I instinctively did the same. And for a moment we stood there on opposite sides of the desk studying each other. Oh, Amber, just one more thing before you go. Yes? I replied while already turning to the door, but his voice made me pause and look back over my shoulder. Victor had that dangerous smile again, the one that seemed to promise all the future complications I definitely wasn't prepared for. Welcome to Novak Media. I'm absolutely certain this is going to be very, very interesting for both of us. I left the office completely red, confused, mortified, and strangely employed, and while Lorraine patiently explained the next steps to me and handed me documents to sign, all I could think was that I had just accepted to work for the man who had seen my pink panties on the sidewalk, the man who was now technically my boss, the man who had that devastating smile and that voice that did completely inappropriate things to my stomach. Ren was going to freak out when I told her this whole story. If even I'm embarrassed, imagine our protagonist. Chapter 2, First Week and Escape.
Are you avoiding me? Or are you afraid of what might happen if you stop running?
You're not going to believe what happened before the interview, I whispered to Ren, as soon as I saw her in the break room on my first day of work, and the expression on my best friend's face was already way too excited for that hour on a Monday morning. She'd been working in Novak Media's design department for 2 years, and had been the one who referred me for the position, so it was natural she'd be waiting for all the juicy details about how my selection process had gone. Ren grabbed my arm and dragged me to the farthest corner of the break room, away from the other employees preparing coffee and talking about their weekend. Tell me everything now, because I've been dying of curiosity since Friday when you sent me that message saying you got the job. I took a deep breath and started telling the whole story from the moment I left my apartment to the treacherous gust of wind that lifted my dress. And Ren's eyes got wider and wider as I described the mortifying details. I told her about the folder falling, the papers flying, the lipstick rolling down the dirty gutter, and especially about the absurdly handsome man who had helped me gather everything without me knowing who he really was. And then I walked into his office for the final interview, and almost died, when I realized it was the same man from the street. I finished the story with my hands covering my face because the shame still burned even after a few days. Victor Novak, the billionaire CEO and my new boss, saw me in pink panties on the sidewalk. Ren, he saw everything. Ren exploded in a laugh so loud that she had to muffle the sound with her own hands to avoid drawing the attention of the entire floor, and her shoulders shook violently while she tried to control herself. You're messing with me. The CEO of this entire company saw you practically naked in pink panties before you even did the interview. All of it. He saw all my panties and even made a comment about my good taste. I hissed mortified, while checking around to make sure no one was listening to our conversation. And now I work here, in the same building as him, seeing him every day, and knowing that he knows exactly what my lingerie looks like. Ren finally managed to control her laughter, and looked at me with that expression she used when she thought I was being too dramatic about something. Nice girl, listen to what I'm gonna tell you with all the sincerity in the world. The worst already happened and it's over. Now you just need to exist normally and do your job like the incredible professional you are. How do I exist normally knowing my boss saw me almost naked on the street? I argued with a desperate voice, and I could feel my face heating up just from remembering the amused expression on Victor's face when I walked into his office. And every time I see him, I remember that horrible moment and want to crawl into a hole. Ren rolled her eyes and took my hand in a comforting gesture that was typical of her. You pretend it didn't happen. Simple as that. And another important thing you need to consider. He hired you even after seeing your panties, so obviously he didn't care that much about the incident. Or he felt sorry for me and gave me the job out of charity, I countered, crossing my arms defensively. But deep down, I knew I was being irrational, because Victor had made it very clear he hired me because of my work. Ren sighed with exaggerated patience and squeezed my shoulders as if dealing with a stubborn child. And this is the most likely option, he found you attractive and competent at the same time, and decided it was worth having you on his team. Now relax once and for all, because you'll barely cross paths with him day to day. He's the CEO and you're a junior marketing analyst, so the chances of you meeting regularly are practically zero, she continued with unshakable logic. You'll work on your floor, he'll stay in his office up there with the other executives, and this whole story will become just an embarrassing memory you'll tell your grandkids someday. I wanted to believe her with all my strength. I really wanted to accept that Victor Novak and I would exist in completely separate orbits within the company, and that the pink panties incident would eventually become just a weird anecdote. But the universe apparently had other plans, because Ren was completely wrong about how often I'd see my new boss. On the first day, he passed by my department during the afternoon and waved in my direction with that sarcastic smile I was already beginning to recognize as his trademark. I immediately turned the other way and pretended to be deeply focused on my computer screen, even though the only open document was a welcome email from HR that I'd already read 3 times. On the second day, there was a meeting in my department to discuss the new campaign the digital marketing department was developing, and to my absolute horror, Victor was present sitting at the head of the table. He actively participated in the discussion, asking intelligent questions and giving suggestions that showed he really understood the business. And I spent the entire meeting trying to make myself invisible in my chair. Amber, what do you think about this approach? Victor's voice cut through my invisibility attempts, and all eyes in the room turned to me. He was looking at me with that disturbing intensity that made my stomach do strange flips, and for one horrible moment, my mind went completely blank. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to sound professional and confident, even though inside I was panicking. I think a campaign primarily focused on social media would be the most efficient to reach our target demographic, especially considering the engagement data we have from the last quarters. Victor nodded slowly, and his smile widened in a way I couldn't completely decipher. Perfect. I like the reasoning. I want you to develop a complete proposal with this strategy and present it to me personally next week. In my office, my heart gave a strange jump in my chest, and I just nodded in agreement, because what else could I do besides accept the task my boss was giving me? The rest of the meeting passed in a confused blur, and when it finally ended, Ren caught me in the hallway with an expression that mixed amusement and genuine concern. He's definitely got his eye on you, she murmured as we walked back to our desks, and I shook my head vehemently, denying the insinuation. Don't make things up. He just wants to see my work because I'm new and needs to evaluate if he made the right choice hiring me. On the third day, I was walking quickly down the hallway with a stack of documents in my arms and my head down, focused on my own thoughts, when the elevator doors opened right in front of me. Victor stepped out of the elevator, and we were literally face to face. So close, I could smell the subtle and expensive scent of his cologne, and my body instantly froze as if I'd been turned into a pillar of salt. Amber. He said my name with that amused tone that was already getting way too familiar. Running from something or just walking at Olympic speed for no apparent reason? No, I'm not running from anything. I was just going to a quick meeting with the team. I lied, shamelessly, and my voice came out too high-pitched to be convincing. There wasn't even any meeting scheduled, but my brain went into panic mode and made up the first excuse that came to mind. Victor crossed his arms and leaned slightly against the hallway wall, subtly blocking my path without being too obvious about it. Meeting where exactly? Because I checked the shared calendar this morning and didn't see any meetings scheduled for your department at this time. It's a small internal meeting. Just the team. Nothing official that needed to go on the general calendar, I continued, digging my own hole deeper and deeper. And by the expression on Victor's face, he knew perfectly well I was lying, but was having too much fun to confront me directly. Of course, informal team meeting makes total sense, he agreed, with a tone that made it clear he didn't believe a single word. But can I ask you an honest question before you go to this very important meeting? I pressed the documents against my chest as if they were a protective shield and nodded stiffly. Go ahead. Are you deliberately avoiding me? He asked directly, without beating around the bush, and his dark eyes studied me with an intensity that made my skin tingle in a completely inappropriate way for a professional environment. No, why would I be avoiding you? I lied again, even knowing it was way too obvious. And Victor laughed quietly in a way that made something strange happen deep in my stomach. I don't know. Maybe because I saw your pink panties on that memorable morning, he said with total sarcasm but no real malice, and I felt my face catch fire immediately. Because honestly, Amber, You turn red and run away every time you see me in the hallways. So either you're avoiding me or you have some serious medical problem you should get checked out. You promised to be professional. I finally managed to respond with indignation, even though my voice was shaky and probably undermining any authority I was trying to project. Victor leaned a little closer and his voice got lower, almost intimate, in a way that made my heart race dangerously. I am being professional. I'm just professionally reminding you that I've already seen too much for you to keep being so shy around me. Relax, Amber. I don't bite. Much. Before my brain could formulate any kind of coherent response, my flight instincts took total control, and I simply turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, completely ignoring the low laugh I heard behind me. My heart was beating erratically, and my face was so hot I could probably fry an egg on it. And all I could think was that Victor Novak was absolutely impossible to deal with. He's clearly interested in you, and I'm not even talking professionally, Ren declared later when we met again in the break room. And this time she had that gleam in her eyes that meant she had elaborate theories. The man is seeking you out, teasing you, creating excuses to talk to you in the hallways. I rolled my eyes and grabbed my water bottle from the fridge with more force than necessary. Or he's just teasing me for pure sadistic fun because he thinks it's funny to see me embarrassed. Some men are like that. Ren, they like causing reactions in people, even if that's true, which I seriously doubt. You realize you two have insane chemistry, right? She insisted, crossing her arms and staring at me with that expression of someone who won't drop the subject. And another thing, girl, he's ridiculously hot, clearly interested, and you guys already skipped several awkward stages of initial getting to know you. Take advantage of that. How exactly do I take advantage of the fact that my boss saw me in my panties? I asked, exasperated, and some people in the break room looked in our direction with curiosity before returning to their conversations. I lowered my voice and continued. He's literally my boss. Ren, there's hierarchy, there's professional ethics, there are 1,000 reasons why this would be a terrible idea. Ren sighed dramatically, as if dealing with someone particularly obtuse. Then get over the embarrassment once and for all and flirt back with him. Show him you're also interesting and confident, not just the shy girl who turns red and runs away down the hallways. I don't know how to flirt. Never did, and I'm definitely not gonna learn now in the middle of my job, I admitted with genuine frustration, because it was the absolute truth, and Ren knew it very well after years of friendship. I'd already figured that out a long time ago, she agreed with a small and comforting smile. But Victor clearly knows how to flirt very well, and he's trying to reach you. You just need to stop running from him like he's a dangerous serial killer and let things happen naturally. I bit my lower lip thoughtfully and considered her words carefully, because deep down I knew Ren was right about at least one thing. Running from Victor every time I saw him was starting to get ridiculous and unsustainable. I'll try, I finally promised, with a resigned sigh. I'll try to stop acting like an idiotic teenager and be minimally normal around him. Great. That's the spirit I wanted to see. Ren clapped excitedly and hugged me quickly before going back to her desk. Now go out there and kill it on that proposal he asked for. Because if there's one thing that'll impress Victor Novak, it's your incredible work. I spent the rest of the week working obsessively on the social media campaign proposal, putting every ounce of creativity and technical knowledge I possessed into it. It was my chance to prove I deserved to be there on my own merit, and not for any other weird reason. And I was determined to deliver something so good that Victor would have no choice but to recognize my professional value. And if a small secret part of me also wanted to impress him in other ways, well, that was something I could keep locked away deep down and pretend didn't exist. Chapter 3. Blouse Accident and Invitation.
Confidence isn't about perfection, Amber. It's about how you move forward.
A week later, I was standing in front of Victor's office door with my leather folder in my hands and trying to control the nerves dancing in my stomach. Lorraine had let me in with an encouraging smile, and now I was there taking deep breaths and trying to gather the confidence I definitely wasn't feeling inside. The campaign proposal was perfect. I'd reviewed every detail at least 20 times, but still my hand trembled slightly when I knocked on the door. Come in, Victor's voice came from the other side, and I opened the door trying to project a professional confidence that was more fake than real. Good morning, I greeted while entering and closing the door behind me, and Victor looked up from the documents he was reviewing with that neutral expression he used in executive mode. I brought the complete proposal for the social media campaign you asked for. He gestured to the chair in front of his desk, and I sat trying not to look as nervous as I felt, and then opened my folder and started the presentation. I explained each aspect of the strategy I'd developed, showed the projected numbers based on data from similar previous campaigns, outlined the implementation timeline and key performance measurement points. As I spoke, I felt my confidence grow because this was my area, where I knew exactly what I was doing. Victor listened with total attention, making occasional notes and asking specific questions that showed he was really processing everything I was saying. When I finished the presentation, there was a moment of silence while he reviewed the printed materials I'd prepared, and my heart beat fast, waiting for the verdict. "This is excellent, Amber," he finally said, looking at me, and there was something in his voice that sounded different from the usual sarcastic tone. "You really have a talent for this. The strategy is well thought out and the numbers make sense." I'm genuinely impressed. The surprise must have shown on my face because I wasn't expecting such a direct and genuine compliment, without any layer of teasing or sarcasm involved. "Thank you," I responded, feeling my face warm slightly, but this time it was from pride and not shame. I worked really hard on this proposal and wanted to make sure it was up to expectations. "It's way beyond expectations," Victor confirmed while closing the folder and leaning back in his chair. "Approve the proposal and start implementation immediately. I want you leading this project from start to finish." I nodded with barely contained enthusiasm, because this was exactly the kind of opportunity I needed to prove my worth at the company. "Got it. I'll start today coordinating with the team and establishing the initial timeline." Victor studied me for a moment, with those dark eyes that seemed to see more than I'd like to reveal. "You relaxed," he observed with a small smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "You're finally not red and running from my presence. Notable progress." "I'm trying to be professional," I replied, raising my chin with renewed dignity. "Like you said you would be, most of the time at least." He laughed in that low way that made something strange happen at the base of my spine. "Good, but just for the record, you're still red, just a little less than before." I felt my face heat up more and had to resist the urge to bring my hands to my cheeks. "Are you always like this? Impossible to deal with?" "I know I am," he agreed with that annoying smile that was somehow also charming. "But you like it, even if you won't admit it." "I don't," I protested, perhaps too quickly to be convincing, and Victor just raised an eyebrow eloquently. "Liar," he said softly, but then returned to professional mode with an ease that was almost disconcerting. "You can go, Amber. Good work. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of this campaign." I left his office feeling a strange mix of relief and something that looked dangerously like disappointment, and spent the rest of the day buried in work, trying not to think too much about the interaction. Ren caught me at lunch with questions about how the presentation had gone, and I told her about Victor's genuine compliment while she smiled meaningfully. "I told you you'd kill it," she sang while we ate our salads in the break room. "The man is clearly impressed with you both professionally and personally." The next day, the universe decided I hadn't been through enough embarrassment and prepared a new test of my dignity. I was in the women's bathroom washing my hands after having my third morning coffee, when water splashed from the soap directly onto my white blouse. The splash wouldn't have been so problematic if the blouse wasn't made of that thin fabric that becomes transparent when wet. "Shit," I muttered, looking at the stain spreading across the fabric, and tried to dry it with paper towels, but that only made everything worse by spreading the water even more. I looked down, and my stomach sank when I realized my light pink bra was perfectly visible through the wet fabric. Of course it had to be pink again, because apparently the universe had a cruel sense of humor. I quickly went back to my desk and grabbed the black blazer I'd left hanging on my chair, putting it on immediately to cover the embarrassing transparency. Problem solved. Or at least that's what I thought until the office air conditioning started blowing at full force directly in my direction. The heat under the blazer became unbearable after half an hour, and eventually I gave in and took off the jacket because sweating at work seemed worse than risking someone noticing the slightly transparent blouse. I was so focused on the campaign budget spreadsheet that I didn't even notice when Victor passed by my department, and only became aware of his presence when I heard his steps stop near my desk. I looked up and met his gaze, and then saw when his eyes briefly dropped to my blouse, before quickly looking away as if trying to be a gentleman. I looked down, following the direction of his gaze, and wanted to die when I realized the office light made my pink bra even more visible through the damp fabric. "Oh my God," I exclaimed, grabbing the blazer with frantic movements and putting it on so fast I almost tore the sleeve. Victor approached my desk and lowered his voice so only I could hear, with that amused tone that was already getting way too familiar. "Pink again. Do you have some obsession with this color, or is it just repeated coincidence?" "It was an accident," I hissed, mortified while adjusting the blazer to make sure it was covering everything. The water splashed when I was washing my hands and got the whole blouse wet. "I know it was an accident, you can relax," he said with a calm voice, but there was an amused gleam in his dark eyes. "But just so you know something important, I've already seen all of this before, remember? So you don't need to die of embarrassment because there's nothing new here for me." The way he said it, with that gentle but teasing sarcasm, made my face catch fire. "Is that supposed to make me feel better about the situation?" "It should," he confirmed. and then crossed his arms, leaning slightly on the edge of my desk. And it should also make you finally accept to have dinner with me, considering the barriers of, he saw me in my panties, and he saw my bra, were broken a long time ago. My brain needed a few seconds to process what he'd just said, and when the words finally made sense, my eyes widened in shock. Are you asking me out? On a real date? Technically, yes. I'm inviting you to dinner, Victor said, with a casual voice as if discussing the weather. You and me, at a restaurant, without talking about work. Just conversation and good food. So, do you accept? You're my boss, I argued, in a low but urgent voice, looking around to make sure no one else was listening to this surreal conversation. Victor shrugged as if this were a minor and unimportant detail. So what? I'm not asking for anything improper or that violates any company policy. Just dinner between two adults who are interested in each other. Unless you have a boyfriend or fiancé I don't know about. No, I don't have anyone, I responded too fast and then bit my lip, realizing how that had sounded. But this isn't ethical, Victor. There's hierarchy and rules about relationships in the workplace. HR allows relationships as long as they're consensual, and there's no direct conflict of interest, he explained with patience, as if he'd already researched this subject before. And I'm not your direct boss, Amber. I'm everyone's boss at this company, but your immediate supervisor is Sarah. Technically, we're free to have dinner together without violating any policy. So, do you accept or not? I looked at him, feeling my heart beat fast, and my mind stuck between the professionalism that said to refuse and the undeniable attraction that wanted to say yes. Can I ask a question first before answering? You can ask as many questions as you want, Victor said, leaning slightly closer, and I could smell the subtle scent of his cologne. Why do you want to have dinner with me? I asked, looking directly into his eyes, searching for any sign of insincerity. Is it because of the pink panties? The bra? You just want to have fun with the clumsy girl who goes through embarrassing situations? Victor's expression changed, and the sarcasm disappeared, being replaced by something more serious and intense. No, Amber, I want to have dinner with you because you're intelligent and talented. Because you're funny when you relax and stop being embarrassed around me. Because you're beautiful and interesting, and I genuinely want to get to know you better outside this work environment. The pink panties and pink bra, they're just fun bonuses, but they're not the reason. I like you, and I want to spend time with you outside of here. My heart raced in a way that had very little to do with nervousness, and a lot to do with the way he was looking at me in that moment. Okay, I heard my own voice say before my brain could interfere. Dinner, but if it gets weird or uncomfortable, we stop and forget this happened. The smile that appeared on Victor's face was different from the others, more genuine and less sarcastic. Deal, Friday at 7. I'll pick you up at your apartment if you give me the address. And Amber, yes? I asked, still processing the fact that I'd just accepted to go out with my boss. His smile regained that teasing touch that was already familiar. Bring dry clothes this time. It would be a shame to ruin another outfit with water. I grabbed a paper ball that was on my desk and threw it at him without thinking. You're unbearable. Victor laughed while dodging the paper with ease and then walked away from my desk. I know, but you like me anyway. See you Friday, Amber. He left the department, leaving me sitting there with my heart beating fast and a mix of panic and excitement running through my veins. I looked at the computer screen without really seeing anything, and then a small and involuntary smile appeared on my face. Shit, I muttered to myself while the smile widened. I really like him. Well, at least now she admits she's in love. That's a good first step. Chapter 4. Dinner and Chemistry.
Maybe you're right, Victor. Sometimes you just have to trust the unexpected.
What dress are you gonna wear? Ren's voice echoed through my bedroom via speakerphone while I looked at the open closet with growing despair. I'd torn through half the wardrobe, and nothing seemed right for dinner with Victor Novak. Because how the hell did someone dress to go out with the billionaire CEO who had already seen their panties and bra? I held up a basic navy blue dress and showed it to the phone camera that was propped on the dresser. This one seems safe and professional, don't you think? Nothing too revealing considering he's already seen a lot of me. That's exactly why you need to kill it, Ren practically screamed from the other side, and I could see the exasperated expression on her face through the small screen. Girl, he's already seen you in lingerie twice, so forget this idea of hiding behind modest clothes. Get the red dress, that one you never have the courage to wear. I looked toward the back of the closet, where the red dress was hanging still with the price tag I'd forgotten to remove when I bought it 6 months ago. It was a beautiful dress that had caught my attention at a sale, but it always seemed too bold for any occasion I could imagine. That one's too flashy. Ren, I'm gonna look like I'm trying too hard. You are trying too hard, she countered with relentless logic. It's a date with a hot man you like, so you can try all you want. Now grab that red dress and put it on before I come over there personally and make you. I sighed defeated and grabbed the dress, finally removing the tag and holding it against my body while looking at myself in the mirror. The fabric was a deep red that contrasted beautifully with my skin tone, and the cut was elegant without being vulgar, falling to just above the knees with a neckline that suggested without showing too much. Okay, I finally gave in, feeling butterflies in my stomach. I'll wear the red one. 2 hours later, I was ready and checking my reflection in the mirror for the 10th time, and I had to admit Ren was right about the dress. My hair was loose in soft waves instead of the usual professional bun. My makeup was light, but enhanced my eyes, and the red dress made me feel confident in a way I didn't expect. When the doorbell rang at 7 on the dot, my heart jumped and my hands got slightly damp. I opened the door and found Victor standing in the hallway, wearing a suit without a tie that somehow managed to look casual and elegant at the same time, and the way his eyes widened slightly when he saw me made something warm spread through my chest. He looked me up and down without hiding his appreciation, and when his eyes finally returned to my face, there was a genuine smile on his lips. Wow, was all he said for a moment, and then shook his head as if trying to compose himself. You look devastating, Amber. Seriously, I knew you were beautiful, but this is another level. I felt my face warm with the direct compliment, but this time it wasn't shame. It was genuine pleasure at being seen that way by him. Thank you. You look great too. The suit without a tie looks amazing on you. Victor offered his arm in a chivalrous gesture that made me smile, and we went down together to his car that was parked in front of the building. It was an expensive but discreet model, exactly the type of vehicle I'd imagine Victor driving, and he opened the passenger door for me before walking around and getting in on the driver's side. The restaurant he chose was in Manhattan, and was the kind of sophisticated place I'd never been to before, with soft lighting and elegant decor that screamed tasteful money. Victor already had a reservation, and we were led to a more secluded table that offered privacy without being too isolated, and he pulled out my chair before sitting across from me. Sit and breathe, he said with a gentle but amused voice. No pressure at all, I promise. It's just dinner between two people who want to get to know each other better. Easy for you to say, I replied, picking up the menu and pretending to study the options while trying to calm my nerves. You probably do this every week with different beautiful women. Victor laughed quietly, and when I looked up, he was watching me with that intensity that made my stomach flip. Actually, no. I rarely go out because I work too much. You're the first person who's interested me enough to want to make this effort in a long time. Dinner started somewhat awkward with polite conversations about the menu and wine, but as the minutes passed and the food arrived, the initial tension dissolved naturally. We discovered we had surprisingly similar tastes in books, both preferring psychological thrillers to sugary romances, and our discussion about movies revealed a shared sarcastic sense of humor that made the conversation flow easily. So you're telling me you've never watched Star Wars? Victor asked, with an expression of fake shock that drew a genuine laugh from me. That should be a crime, Amber. I'm gonna have to correct this serious flaw in your cinematic education. I tried to watch it once but fell asleep halfway through, I confessed, laughing at the way he shook his head with theatrical disapproval. Don't look at me like that. Space and lightsabers just don't hold my attention. The conversation naturally drifted to deeper subjects, and when Victor asked why I'd chosen marketing, I found myself talking passionately about how I'd always loved creating narratives and convincing people through well-told stories. It's like art with practical purpose, I explained, gesturing with my hands as I spoke. You take an idea or product and transform it into something that resonates emotionally with people. There's creativity, but also strategy, and I love that balance. Victor listened with genuine attention, and his eyes never left my face while I spoke. And when I finished my explanation, he smiled in that way that made my heart race. And you? Why business? I returned the question, resting my chin on my hand. I imagine inheriting a billion-dollar company isn't exactly a normal vocational choice. I inherited the company from my father when he retired, Victor confirmed, taking a sip of wine. But I made it grow and triple in size because I genuinely like building things. I like seeing ideas become reality, transforming abstract concepts into businesses that work. And I also like hiring talented people and watching them shine. Like you, the way he said it, with sincerity, without any layer of teasing, made my chest tighten in a good way. You only hired me because I'm talented, I asked with a small smile playing on my lips. Or did the fact that you saw me in pink panties on the sidewalk have some influence? Victor laughed out loud this time, a genuine laugh that lit up his entire face and made some people at nearby tables look in our direction. Honestly, about 70% was for the talent, 20% for the pink panties, and 10% pure curiosity about who would be capable of throwing an entire folder on the ground just to hold down a flying dress. I laughed so hard I had to cover my mouth with my hand, and the shame that would normally come with the mention of that day simply didn't appear because the way Victor talked about it was affectionate instead of cruel. I have terrible motor coordination when I panic, I admitted, still laughing. My brain just shuts down and my hands decide to make the worst possible choice. But you also have courage, Victor said, getting more serious, and leaned slightly over the table, bringing us closer. You could have given up, could have run away in shame and canceled the interview. But you gathered everything that had fallen, organized your dignity along with your papers, and went to do that interview even knowing you were late and shaken. That's impressive, Amber. Shows strength of character. The sincere compliment caught me off guard, and I felt emotion tighten my throat in an unexpected way. Thank you, I murmured, looking at him, and feeling something shift between us, some invisible barrier dissolving. That means a lot coming from you. Seriously. Can I tell you something without any sarcasm or teasing? Victor asked, holding my gaze with that intensity that made my heart race. You can, I replied, holding my breath without realizing it. You're incredible, intelligent, talented, funny when you relax and stop being nervous. And I really want to keep getting to know you, not as your boss, but as a man interested in an extraordinary woman. Can we try this? See where it goes. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it, and all the logical reasons why this could be complicated simply evaporated in the face of the sincerity in his eyes. Yes, I replied with a voice firmer than I expected. We can try. I want this too. The smile that appeared on Victor's face was genuine and without any layer of sarcasm, and he extended his hand across the table, taking mine and intertwining our fingers. Great. But I need to warn you about some things before we move forward with this. I'm terrible at traditional romance. I'm too sarcastic, straight to the point, and sometimes I have no filter between thought and speech. I laughed quietly and squeezed his fingers back. And I'm extremely shy, clumsy in social situations, and I blush embarrassingly easily. So I think we're kind of a disastrous pair. Perfect, Victor said with that smile I was already starting to love. We're a disaster together, but like that fun kind of disaster that'll make for funny stories in the future. Fun disaster, I repeated, testing the words and smiling because it felt right somehow. I accept those terms. We stayed there looking at each other with our hands intertwined on the table, and the tension in the air shifted to something warmer and charged with possibility. The rest of dinner passed in a pleasant blur of easy conversation and genuine laughter, and when we finally left the restaurant, it was past 11 at night, but felt like it had only been half an hour. In the car on the way to my apartment, a comfortable silence hung between us while Victor drove with one hand on the wheel and the other holding mine on the console between the seats. The city passed by the windows in blurred lights, and I felt like I was floating in a bubble of contentment I didn't want to end. When he parked in front of my building, neither of us made any move to get out of the car immediately. I really enjoyed tonight, Victor said, turning to look at me, and the dim light from the street lamp illuminated his face in a way that highlighted his dark eyes. Really enjoyed it. You're cooler and more interesting than I already expected, and my expectations were already high. I enjoyed it too, I admitted, feeling my face warm, but this time it was pleasant. You're kinder and funnier than you let on at the office. Less sarcastic too, at least today. Don't get too used to it because the sarcasm comes back tomorrow, he joked, but his expression got more serious. Can I see you again? Outside of work? I mean, another dinner, or movies, or whatever you want to do? Yes, I'd really like that, I replied, with a smile so wide it hurt my cheeks. We can set something up for next week if you have free time in your busy CEO schedule. Victor leaned slightly in my direction, and his movement was slow enough to give me time to pull back if I wanted to, but I definitely didn't want to. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly with a husky voice, and his eyes searched my face asking for clear permission. My heart raced, and my breath caught in my throat, but I managed to nod and murmur, you can. That came out shaky. Victor closed the distance between us carefully, and when his lips touched mine it was soft and testing at first, as if giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away, so I leaned closer, and the kiss deepened, becoming more intense and urgent as the seconds passed. When we finally separated, we were both breathing fast and my mind was completely empty of any coherent thoughts. Wow, was all I could say, and my voice came out breathless and somewhat dazed. I completely agree, Victor said with an equally affected voice, and ran his thumb gently over my lips in an intimate gesture that made my stomach flip. Good night, Amber. Thank you for the best night I've had in years. Good night, Victor, I replied, opening the car door with legs that felt made of jelly. And thank you for dinner and the incredible company. I got out of the car, floating through the building hallway to my apartment, and when I finally closed the door behind me, I leaned against it with a silly smile on my face and my heart still beating erratically. I grabbed my phone and saw several messages from Ren asking how it had gone, but all I could type was, "It was perfect." Perfection must be the only word going through Amber's mind right now. Chapter 5. Dating and Acceptance.
That win changed everything, and I'm not letting you walk out of my life again.
6 months after that first night, I was at my desk reviewing the numbers from the latest campaign when I felt a familiar presence approaching. I looked up and found Victor standing next to my workstation, with that small smile I now recognized as exclusively mine, different from the professional smile he used with all the other company employees. "Pink panties today?" he asked quietly, leaning slightly in my direction, voice low enough that only I could hear, but with that teasing tone that had never disappeared in the months we'd been together. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't contain the smile that appeared on my lips, because this specific tease had become an inside joke between us. "You're never gonna let this die, are you?" I responded, trying to sound exasperated but failing miserably when laughter escaped. "Never," Victor confirmed with absolute conviction, and his eyes sparkled with genuine amusement. "It's literally part of our origin story. How do you expect me to forget the moment that defined our entire relationship?" I looked around discreetly to make sure no one was paying attention to our conversation, because despite dating for months, we kept everything extremely discreet in the work environment. Some close people knew, including Ren, who had practically thrown a party when I officially told her, but most employees had no idea about the relationship between the CEO and the marketing analyst. "Lunch with me today?" Victor asked, changing the subject, but keeping his voice low and intimate. "In my office, I thought about ordering pizza from that Italian place you like. Door locked, no interruptions, just you and me." I felt my face warm slightly, but this time it was anticipation and not shame, because our private lunches in his office had become my favorite part of the week. 12:30 work, I asked, mentally checking my schedule. "I have a team meeting until noon." "Perfect. I'll wait for you then," he said, and then lowered his voice even more until it was almost a whisper. "And Amber, your dessert. Just warning you now." I grabbed the highlighter that was on my desk and threw it at him, trying to look annoyed, but the laughter that escaped completely ruined the effect. "Go to work, Victor. You have an entire company to run." He caught the highlighter in the air with quick reflexes and gave me a wink before leaving the department, and I sat there with a silly smile on my face, unable to concentrate on the spreadsheet numbers. I didn't notice Ren approaching until she dropped a folder on my desk with deliberate force to get my attention. "You two are so adorable, it's nauseating," Ren declared, sitting on the edge of my desk with that mischievous smile that meant she'd seen everything. "Seriously, the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching, it would melt the coldest heart. He's unbearable," I replied, but my smile contradicted the words, and Ren laughed, shaking her head. "You love him," she stated as if it were the most obvious fact in the world, and it wasn't even a question, but an observation. "You can admit it, we're among friends, and I promise not to make too much of a scene." I looked at her and felt my chest tighten in that good way that happened whenever I thought about Victor in recent months. "Maybe," I started cautiously, but Ren raised an eyebrow, waiting, and I gave in. "Okay, yes, I love him, a lot." "It's scary and wonderful at the same time." "And him?" Ren asked with genuine curiosity, resting her chin on her hand. "Has he said the magic words yet, or is he still in the showing without verbalizing phase?" "He shows it all the time," I replied, thinking of all the little things Victor did that showed how much he cared. "But no, he hasn't said it explicitly yet. I think he's not very good with emotional words, prefers to show through actions." Ren smiled in that knowing way she had. "He'll say it when he's ready. And by the way he looks at you, I'm sure he loves you too. It's just a matter of time until he admits it verbally." The rest of the day passed at a pleasant pace of productive work, interspersed with thoughts about Victor. And when it was finally 12:30, I went up to his office with butterflies dancing in my stomach even after 6 months together. Lorraine let me in with a knowing smile, because she definitely knew about us, and silently approved. Victor was waiting with 2 open pizza boxes on the low table near the office couch instead of the formal executive desk, and there was an open bottle of red wine breathing beside them. He'd taken off his jacket and loosened his tie, and the sight of him relaxed and genuinely smiling, just for me, made my heart race. "Did you lock the door?" he asked when I approached, and I nodded, confirming while kicking off my shoes and throwing myself on the couch next to him. "Great, because I have plans for you that definitely require privacy." I laughed and grabbed a slice of pizza before he could pull me into a kiss, because I knew Victor well enough to know that if he kissed me first, food would be forgotten. Food first, plans later. "I'm starving," We ate lunch talking about work initially, but then drifting to more personal subjects. And Victor told me about the annoying call he'd had in the morning with a difficult investor, while I complained about a colleague who always took credit for other people's work. It was easy and comfortable, and I loved how we could be ourselves without filters or performances. So, Victor said after we finished eating and were just relaxing on the couch with wine. Did Ren say anything today after I left your department? Because I saw her practically running in your direction. She said we're adorable and it's nauseating how cute we are, I replied with a laugh, and Victor groaned dramatically, covering his face with his hand. And she also made me admit something I'd been avoiding saying out loud. Victor lowered his hand and looked at me with curiosity, and something that looked like hope. And what would that be that you were avoiding admitting? I took a deep breath, feeling my heart beat hard, but knowing it was time to be honest. That I love you, that I'm completely and irrevocably in love with you since, I don't even know exactly when. Maybe since that third time you teased about the pink panties, and I laughed instead of dying of embarrassment. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but felt like an eternity, and then Victor pulled my face with his hands and kissed me with an intensity that stole my breath. When we separated, his dark eyes were shining with emotion he rarely let show. I love you too, he said with a husky voice loaded with feeling. Since the day of the wind, actually. But it took time for me to process and accept it because I'd never felt something like this before. You make me want more than just work and professional success. You make me want to wake up happy, build a real life, have a real partnership with someone. Tears started to accumulate in my eyes, but they were happy ones, and I held his face with my hands too. Partnership sounds perfect. You and me against treacherous winds and whatever else comes up. We spent the rest of the lunch hour intertwined on the couch, exchanging kisses and whispering silly things that only people in love say, and when I finally had to go back to my desk, I was floating and my lips were swollen from so much kissing. Ren gave me a knowing look but said nothing, just smiled and went back to work. The following months passed in a happy blur of work routine, interspersed with romantic dinners, lazy weekends at his apartment, and the constant feeling of being exactly where I should be. Victor still teased me about pink panties regularly. I still turned red sometimes when he caught me off guard, and our dynamic of affectionate sarcasm had never diminished. On a Friday night, 6 months after our first I love you, I was lying on the huge couch in Victor's apartment, with my head on his lap, while he pretended to watch the movie I'd chosen, but was actually playing with my hair. The soft light in the room created a cozy atmosphere, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. I have an important question, Victor said, breaking the comfortable silence, and his voice had that playful tone that meant he was going to tease me. And do you still turn red when you remember the day of the wind? I laughed, turning my head to look at him. Sometimes yes, but much less than before. Why this question? Victor looked at me with an expression that mixed amusement and tenderness, and his fingers stopped playing with my hair to caress my face. Because I think about that day every day, and not just about the pink panties, although that part is memorable too. But I think about you all red and embarrassed, gathering your scattered papers, fighting to maintain your dignity but refusing to give up. It was in that moment I knew. Knew what? I asked, holding my breath while his gaze deepened. That you were special, that I was going to want to get to know you better, that I'd probably fall in love with you if I had the chance, he confessed with raw sincerity. And that treacherous wind is officially my favorite ally in the entire universe. I laughed out loud and lightly hit his chest. You're ridiculous. You're romanticizing the most humiliating moment of my entire life. I am ridiculous, but you love me anyway. Victor countered with that smile that melted my heart every time. Admit that you love this story now too, after everything. I sighed dramatically but was smiling. Okay, maybe I love it a little bit. It's a story our friends will never forget, and that we'll definitely tell eventually when someone asks how we met. Exactly, Victor agreed, and then got more serious, his eyes seeking mine with intensity. But seriously now, without any teasing, I need you to know something important. That day changed my entire life in ways I didn't even imagine were possible. You made me want more, be better, build something real with someone. You're my partnership, my best friend, my love, forever, if you want. My heart swelled so much it hurt, and tears started running down my face before I could control them. Forever, I repeated with a choked voice. But if any wind lifts my dress again at some point in life, I'll hold it, Victor interrupted, pulling me into a deep kiss full of promises. This time, and all the next times, I'll always be there to hold the dress, or hold you, or hold our life together. I promise. I laughed between the kiss, feeling happiness overflow from every pore. You're impossible, but I love you so much. It's annoying. Mutual feeling, he murmured against my lips before kissing me again. Annoying and completely addictive. You're my person, Amber. We stayed there intertwined on the couch for hours, just existing together. And eventually, Victor pulled me to lie on top of him, while his fingers drew lazy patterns on my back. The TV continued playing the movie. Neither of us was really watching Guy, but it didn't matter because everything that mattered was there in that moment. You know what's funny? Victor murmured after a long silence, and I could feel the vibration of his voice in the chest under my ear. If I'd known that a treacherous wind would bring the love of my life directly to me, I would have hired an industrial fan to stay in front of the building every day. I lifted my head so fast I almost hit his chin, and my horrified expression made Victor explode in laughter. Victor, that's terrible. You can't say those things. I can. It's true, he insisted, still laughing, while pulling me back down. Best investment of my life would be in strategically positioned wind equipment. Wind and pink panties. The perfect combination. I grabbed the nearest pillow and hit him hard, but I was laughing so much it had no impact at all. I'm gonna kill you. You're the most impossible person I've ever met. Victor caught my wrist before I could hit him again and pulled me into a kiss that stole all the air from my lungs. You love me too much to kill me, he whispered against my lips with absolute confidence. I sighed, defeated but smiling, because he was right. Unfortunately, it's true. I love you annoyingly and desperately. Unfortunately, Victor repeated with fake indignation, and his eyes danced with joy. And take that back immediately. Fortunately, I corrected, resting my forehead against his. Very, very fortunately, the most right thing that's ever happened in my life. Kay's note. Writing this story was a delicious journey of balancing humor and romance. From the first chapter, my goal was to create a real protagonist, vulnerable but strong, who could resonate with readers who've been through embarrassing moments. The biggest challenge was keeping the chemistry between Amber and Victor growing without being rushed. Each chapter needed to advance the relationship while preserving their essence. Her shy but competent, him sarcastic but genuine. The pink panties became more than a comedic element. It became the symbol of their authenticity, of the imperfect beginning that generated something beautiful. Working in first person was liberating. Diving into Amber's head allowed me to explore every conflicting thought. Every moment of shame transformed into affection. Her voice needed to be intimate, funny with herself, but also deeply emotional at the right moments. Victor was built to be more than the powerful CEO. I wanted to show a man who uses sarcasm as armor, but melts for the right woman. His evolution, from teaser to vulnerable partner, was my favorite part. In the end, this story celebrates that the best loves start in the most imperfect moments. Sometimes, it's the treacherous wind that takes us exactly where we need to be. And if you want to see another story, click on the video that appears now on your screen.